So very cool to meet you. I have to be honest. You follow somebody on some platform and you never really know who they are. And this is an amazing chance to get to meet you. So tell me a bit about yourself, Tyler.
Uh, I I think first things first, I am a Jamaican Jew, which is very rare. There's not many of us, especially those with platforms like mine. There's like n nil to none. So I'm very aware that I am the rare Jamaican Jew who's on this platform who's talking about all sorts of things. Before October 7th, I focused a lot on Jewish history. So I'd make content about Jewish history that's unknown, that people don't know. And I love that because
How long have you been doing this now? And what's your name on out there? It's
blunt black Jew.
Blunt Black Jew, which I think is just so blunt and so beautiful and so what I believe is Zion proud. I think that that is just amazing. How long have you been doing this?
So it's now 2024. So about 4 years now. I've been doing it for four
That's
years.
amazing.
Yeah.
So it started kind of like during Corona, and
Yeah.
then now October 7th awakened a lot of different people, but you were actually engaged before the massacre, before the event. Okay, wow. So you've curated this voice and you feel like you're alone out there as the Jamaican Jew. You haven't met others like yourself?
Like I guess online, yes, but there are
Oh,
there are Jamaican Jews who are online, but not on the same way that I am. So it's
okay.
lonely. It's lonely, but
It is lonely.
I get messages from them thanking me and telling me to speak more about Caribbean Jews and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a bittersweet sword, I would call it.
Wow, I think that that's actually a very common reality for a lot of people, even those who don't have such an eclectic background as yours.
Mm.
I think that people are feeling very lonely, and that's why they're turning to social media when they hear a voice like yours and they're like, "Wow, this guy, he speaks my soul. He touches me." I love that there are people encouraging you. I myself grew up actually with a big awareness about Caribbean Jewry, if I can be honest. Um, I did for a couple of reasons. My family was involved all up my life in B'nai B'rith. And B'nai B'rith was very interested in helping to sustain the small Jewish communities that were in these
Yeah.
outlying areas. Dominican Republic, I've studied and worked with in areas around the Caribbean, and I had gone to the synagogue. I remember I was 13 years old. We went to the synagogue in St. Thomas, in the Virgin Islands, and it was like this. Wait a second, there are Jews who look different, but we sing the same songs. And we have these things.
Exactly.
It was the most amazing experience. So I'm really amazed that you've taken that on for you as like you're a voice for that. That's a really beautiful thing.
It is. And I was always scared. I was always scared that our history would disappear in the Caribbean for numerous reasons. Uh, so I took it upon myself because there is no Caribbean Jewish organization out there that's doing this work. Uh, the organizations that should be doing this work are not. Uh, so it's up to me and other Caribbean Jews to, we have to speak about our history, our traditions, our history, because no one else is going to do it for us. So definitely agree.
I think that everywhere people are kind of feeling a little disillusionment with the activities of organizations, but we're not supposed to talk about it. We're not supposed to say that out loud because we're like, we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to, put ourselves like, for example, in harm's way. I mean, I want to partner with as many organizations as possible, but there's always so much territorialism and friction and bureaucracy, and it makes it really hard. So the truth is that the best activism throughout what 2000 years of our existence has always been grassroots. It's always been one guy, one woman, one storyteller at a time, and saying, we got to tell this story again and again and again and again. And you know what? Yes, half of the children are going to go, oh my God, I don't want to hear these
Yeah.
stories anymore. I'm bored. This isn't me. I want to just be normal. So tell me about you, Tyler. What made you not want to assimilate, be normal, not hold on to? I mean, so many people want to let go of their Jewishness, and you have embraced it. Were you raised like that too? Is that from your home?
No, definitely not very assimilated family. Didn't do a lot Jewishly. My awakening was actually in high school. Um, I dealt with a lot of anti-Semitism in high school, which was shocking to me because everyone knew who I was in high school. Uh, I wouldn't say I was Mr. Popular, but people knew who I was.
High
So
school, what area are you from? Tell me where you.
I grew up in Markham, which is a city in Ontario. It's outside of Toronto. Um, and my school is in Markham, my high school. Uh, and I had pennies thrown at me. I had "you killed Jesus" comments. Like every sort of anti-Semitism you can think of occurred when I was in
Oh,
high school.
wow.
So when I left, I when I graduated, I went to university expecting, I want to meet all these Jews. We're going to have a great time in university. We're going to have this community that I never had in high school. There,
Yeah.
there won't be any anti-Semitism in university. Boy, was I wrong. Um, My university, the University of Toronto Scarborough, I would call it hell on earth.
Oh my
And
God.
that awakened me to the fact that I can't assimilate. I can't be normal. I can't be one of those Jews who, you know, they put their Judaism on the back burner
Right,
and
right.
they're a regular Joe who there's nothing Jewish about them.
Mm-hmm.
They want to keep it away from them when it comes to being in public. I couldn't do that. I wear a kippah all the time. So I could never do that. I couldn't do that. Um, so my university, they passed BDS motion after BDS motion, boycott, divest, sanction. Uh, and it was painful. It was very painful because we had a very small Jewish community on this campus, and the student union was very anti-Israel, uh, and very anti-Jewish. I remember there was a time where I was organizing Holocaust remembrance event. We were going to bring in a Holocaust survivor to come speak. And, you know, the VP Equity at the time, she was Palestinian. I remember this very well. She wanted to co-sign with this event, and we had various meetings about it. And one day she comes to me and says, I have this perfect Holocaust survivor to come speak to for the event. The Holocaust survivor was very pro-Palestinian, extremely. I hate using pro-Palestinian,
Right.
anti-Israel, very
That's right.
anti-Israel speaker. And I said, no, this isn't the time or place. This is about the Holocaust, the Shoah. We're talking about the massacre of 6 million Jews here. Why are you wanting to push someone who, yes, she is a Holocaust survivor, but she has an agenda too, an anti-Israel agenda. Why are you pushing that? Why are you trying to cause division and tension here? And I ultimately said no, and she backed out of the event. She pulled the student union out. She removed the student union logo off the event posters, everything. And ultimately, we did do the event. It was small. There wasn't a huge turnout because the student union controls all the promotion. So things like that made me really think and question this notion of if we're just quiet, nothing will happen. If we don't rock the boat, nothing will happen. If
Right.
we if we modify our Judaism, nothing will happen. We'll be safe and secure. We weren't. And we're seeing it now. We're not.
Yes.
So I think those key moments in my life awoke me to the fact that you can't really hide your Judaism, and if you hide your Judaism and they find out you're a Jew, you're still a Jew, and they're gonna treat you like that. So I guess that's my answer to that
Yeah,
question.
I think that's, wow. First of all, it's sad that sometimes the encounter with such hate is what drives us to have a positive identity. But it's also a good thing that we are able to translate that pain into something meaningful. And I think that that's really what you've been able to do. And I can see, I can now understand actually in some of the what I see in your voice on Instagram, and I can see that kind of pride that comes from a no apology stance of demanding respect, but because that's going to be the only way to counter the endless demonization that they will bring at us. And the experience I think with that you had that brought the Holocaust survivor in to the situation of Israel and Palestine, or Palestinians. I don't usually use the term Palestine because it's a co-opted term. And when somebody who is an anti-Israel Holocaust survivor, it is somebody whose emotion has been triggered by that, shall we say, extreme empathy, that need for them as a victim to identify, and the effectiveness of Palestinians to claim to be a victim like them. So that almost codependent identity that they're sharing is possibly the only way we can excuse such
Yeah.
a, forgive me, inane comparison. Because when we hear people talk about how Israel is committing the same atrocities, and you think to yourself, these are only people who know nothing. And we live in a generation where people know nothing. I mean, you have said no one has known anything about the Caribbean Jewish community. I don't think people know about the Canadian Jewish
No.
identity. And it's very unique between your regions in Canada.
Yeah.
Australia, you've got, two major centers of Jewish life, and they're like two different worlds, right? And then we've got Israel, and how are we supposed to connect with this? So many people who are very proud Jews don't see Israel as an extension of themselves. Do you? And is that something that, was that a part of your awakening as a young person, or is it something that developed over the years?
So when I tell this story, my friends always laugh because when I was younger, I was actually anti-Israel, very anti-Israel when I was younger. So
Really?
when I was around, because I was politically aware when I was like 10, 11.
And
So
again, this is your family, your family dynamic. They had awareness, and even to the extent where you knew about Israel and
yeah,
you knew
yeah,
about, but it wasn't a practice, it wasn't an identified
it
lifestyle.
it wasn't an identified lifestyle. Like I was a big reader, so
Right.
I would read all the
Good
books
for
that I could
you.
get. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'm 10, 11, I read Karl Marx, which people find hard to
Oh
believe, but I read
man,
it. I read
kindred
it.
spirits
Yeah.
here. Oh yeah.
So I would read and
Huge reader. I read Karl Marx,
exactly.
of course, not for the communism and the social and the comparison between the socialism and the Nazism and the different levels of fascism, because I already at 10 years old too was obsessed with trying to understand the
Exactly.
world. So yeah, I
Exactly.
get that. I get that.
Yeah. Zionism, when I first read Zionism, it didn't really apply to me. In my back in my youthful days, it didn't really apply to me because I saw myself as Canadian. I'm Canadian first, Jewish second. Zionism is this foreign concept to me that I don't really necessarily understand, but it says establishment of a Jewish homeland. Well, why do we need a Jewish homeland? What's the point? And during those years, I would consider myself an anti-Zionist. I was very anti-Israel. I was very, you know, I didn't buy into this Jewish homeland. I didn't buy into this. We were promised the land. I didn't buy into it. But I wouldn't say I was going out of my way to support Palestinian rights or Palestinians or
Right. I
any
think
of that.
a lot of people find themselves in that position, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
They don't know. Yeah.
yeah. I didn't know. And then when I started growing up and reading more, I figured to myself, hold on, I'm a Jew. Why shouldn't I support a Jewish state?
Mhm.
Zionism now makes sense to me. And the turning point was watching the 2006 Lebanon War because CNN was broadcasting that every single day. I remember uh the 2004 withdrawal from Gaza. Like that was on television every single day. So those two events impacted me. In 2004, I saw my people being forcibly removed from their homes in Gaza. And I didn't understand what was the point of this. What were we gaining from doing this? At the time, I was still a little bit anti-Zionist, but it didn't make sense to me what they were doing. And then 2006 hit. That's when I started questioning this whole idea of anti-Zionism. Hold on, they're attacking us. We didn't start this. They started this. They killed and kidnapped two soldiers on the northern border of Lebanon and Israel, starting this war. So why am I this anti-Zionist? Why am I so opposed to a Jewish state? And I read more and it started to make sense to me. And here we are today. I am the biggest Zionist you can meet. I am I would argue I'm more Zionist than a lot of my Jewish friends. I wear my Zionism on my sleeve, on my
That's
sleeves.
amazing.
And if it wasn't for 2006, I could see myself at those encampments today.
Really?
Yeah, if it wasn't
To
for
that degree.
yeah, if it wasn't for the 2006
Because they
war.
present a logical opportunity for expression of all the things, and it doesn't matter why you hate the Jews or why you hate Israel. Here's the place to come.
Yeah,
Here's the place to make it a party. Let's have a
exactly.
party, hating them.
Yeah.
And I've worked with a few students actually in different campuses in Canada right now, for the last many years actually, and watching it grow and grow and grow. And people be like, no, it's okay, but it's going to be okay. And it's going to be okay until like you realize that no, this is not just going to go away. It's only going to get worse. And, what you experienced was already many years ago. Even I've been off of university camp. I've been in Israel already 20 years. But when I was at Boston University, I studied with Elie Wiesel, and
Mhm.
we were faced with suddenly this Holocaust inversion, and the student union allowed a pro-Palestinian, and again, these are terms we use today, but they were different back then. And a man in a kippah comes and he sets up a table and puts up all of this propaganda that's completely photoshopped of soldiers against children and comparing it with the Holocaust pictures and things like that. And it got ugly. And there were punches thrown, and I'm
Yeah.
the one who I got hit and I got pulled out and I got nearly arrested. And they said to me, because if you weren't wearing your Star of David, then this wouldn't have happened. It's my fault. Like
Yeah,
you said, you wear a kippah. I'm a Star of David girl wearing all my. And everybody's like, well, you're the provoker. You're the one who's the trigger of everybody else, just like Israel's existence is the trigger. I think that it's phenomenal, though, that you found yourself able to extract from that world. It's cult-like. I mean,
very cult-like.
did you lose, I'm assuming, a lot of friends and a lot of support system, even if once you, so to speak, came out as a Zionist?
I would say no, actually. No.
Really?
It didn't happen when I fully embraced Zionism, or I fully embraced my Judaism. I would say it became an issue when I did embrace it, and I would talk about it, I would have conversations. That's when the disconnect occurred between
And they would
friends and
would they
support groups.
listen to you at all, or did they shut you down?
It was a mix of both. It was 50-50. 50% would listen, and then it would be like they didn't hear anything at all the next day. And then the other 50% blew me off completely. And, I had a very large friend group before October 7th, uh, and that disappeared, completely disappeared overnight.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
like I
Wow.
had a Palestinian friend who, I was very close to. He knew I was a hardcore Zionist. He knew everything about that, but the moment I spoke up in defense of Israel, that was too much for him. And he ended the friendship, blocked me off everything. And that, I think, out of all the friendships that ended because of my advocacy, that hurt the most because I viewed that as a relationship of coexistence. If we could coexist here in Canada, even though we both come into this friendship with the conflict. There's no separating it. I'm a Jew, he's a Palestinian. There's no way separating the conflict from our realities. But we had that moment of coexistence where we could be friends, and that was taken away. And that hurt. That hurt a lot. That was the one friendship that hurt a lot. Um, but I would say that it was mostly after I embraced my Zionism, I embraced my Judaism. That's when the friendship started to die off and uh, isolated. You can even say, um, and it hurts. It hurts.
And since October 7th, it's been a complete shutdown.
It's been a it's been a complete shutdown, total shutdown.
Have you found any support system through your online activism? Have you been able to connect with others like yourself who, and I really do believe that if not most, at least many of the social media activists who are out there today fighting the good cause in these toxic environments. Again, I don't believe that now, all these years later, I remember my years of activism on campus, but I'm old and older, and I wouldn't be able to put myself, not even the rallies, that's not an arena that speaks to me. I also am an avid reader, and I like to be able to get involved in ways of opening minds and opening hearts and creating those kinds of programming opportunities. That's one of the ways of activism that I've always been involved in. And it feels like people are turning so insular, and social media allows that, it enables it. And it allows people to say, I don't actually need to go out in public and run a program. And I do this too. I'm in Israel, you're in the state, you're in Canada, and we are able to connect. And, we don't need to be face to face in front of the flag waving, violent, dressed as Hamas terrorists that are out there. There are all different ways of advocacy. So I go back to my question. Do you think like you've been able to establish some nice relationships in that social media realm that have helped you stay strong against the toxic impact?
I would say yes. I like I a lot of my followers message me all the time, and I try and talk to them, but I don't think they realize, some of them don't understand what content creators and influencers go through online, because
True.
it's a very abusive environment where,
Incredibly.
yeah, you get death messages, you get threats of rape to your female family members. You, or if you're a woman influencer, you get threats of rape too. Like, it's the sexual violence, violent rhetoric, threats, death threats, and I've gotten it all. I've gotten it all. I've gotten racial slurs. I like I often get, oh, if you go to Israel, they'll treat you bad because you're black, even though I've been to Israel several times and I'm still here. Um, so the
People like to
support,
try to import diaspora
exactly.
racism into Israel, and it doesn't work because the concept of race in that definition doesn't exist. I can imagine that you come here and you're feeling a totally different
Yeah,
type of identity
yeah.
awakening. You know.
I feel very comfortable in Israel.
Oh well,
I
next
feel
time you're here, we're gonna get together.
we will.
Okay.
But I definitely feel support from other influencers and content creators because they go through the same thing.
So
We
you
all go
talk
through the same
about it
thing.
together.
Yeah, we have our Instagram groups that we chat in and we talk about, our WhatsApp
Right.
groups, and we talk about it. We go through the same thing all the time, so why not talk about it? Uh, so it's relaxing in a way because we can find a place that's free from everyone else, and we can just sit and chat and talk about, someone sent this in my DMs today and it was horrible, and but oh, I got something very great in my DMs and it was beautiful. So the online community has been very supportive, and it's been a godsend that we have it, because if we didn't have it, I don't know how I would manage. I don't know how any of us would manage, really. Um, so
Wow.
it's fantastic to have it.
Do you feel like the people in that group are giving this as the bulk of their focus in their life right now?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And how
yeah.
has that affected? I mean, you all have to have jobs and everybody's got to make our living and make our life work. How do you balance between it? I mean, is this is it's I don't want to say for fun, but this is a leisure activity that you have to figure out how to monetize yourselves, and influencers very often that's a challenge. So how do you balance that? How do you do your activism and try to,
It is a struggle. Oh my goodness, it is a struggle to balance the work life and the activism life. For many activists or online creators or influencers, this is their job. The activism is their job, and they're passionate about it, and they go about it 1,000% all of the time, day in, day out, 24/7, 7 days a week, whatever you want to call it. But they do it with a passion, a burning passion, because they know no one else will do it for them. And I think,
That's how I feel. That's what we're
yeah.
trying to do at Israel Forever. And I can tell you, I know because I built this myself, and it's very difficult to see how the social media growth is so challenging today to break through the algorithms and everything. And we feel sometimes that, I'm constantly, every day, it is new content we are creating. Every day, it is new messaging. It's more empowerment. It's more ideas for inspiration and how here are your facts, and here's as much as I can give you from the wealth of knowledge that I've inherited over the years. But I find that it's like impossible to break through. It's impossible to not feel like you're talking to a void, or there's just, or you're talking in the echo chamber. But if you don't have this many followers and you're not a part of these, I had no idea, these Insta communities and things like that, because I'm so busy doing so many elements of it, because it's also my work. The activism is my work. I find that there's also, how do you get the next step? How do you make the next step to make sure that all of this energy that we are investing, it has its value, that we're making an impact? How do you do it?
Yeah, I feel that a lot. Oh my
Do you?
goodness. Because when I started Blunt Black Jew, I wanted it to be non-Jews. I didn't really want a lot of Jewish followers because I knew I'd be speaking through the echo chamber. I did not want that. I wanted non-Jews because that's the best way to do outreach, is speak to non-Jews, get them to learn more about Judaism, and not even Judaism, the conflict, if you're focused around that. That was my target audience, but it didn't work out that way. Uh, and I think that's what I regret the most, that I didn't try harder to promote myself within non-Jewish areas of social media, because I feel that it wouldn't have made a huge difference, but would have made a small difference. And for me, that means more than anything. If one non-Jew came to me and said, "You know what? I have read your content. I feel more educated than I was earlier. I want to tell two friends about this post. I want to encourage them to read it, to educate themselves." And that's what I wanted Blunt Black Jew to do. Uh, and I understand that feeling very well. That energy, you use all this energy to build and to create and to promote, and then it doesn't really equal anything, and it's exhausting.
Or it's immeasurable.
Yeah.
It's not, we can't ever really know what it's equal to, because, I've spent my life being a teacher and an educator and a private, a personal guide for students, and trying to make sure that I can give them the same kind of empowerment that I got as a young person. Actually, one of my, like, my unique target audience is always outside the echo chamber, the unaffiliated Jew, the one
Hmm.
who maybe was raised. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, and my family was like super Jewish family, right? We were involved in everything. Everything was very traditional, and we raised with the love of Israel. And my grandmother's from Tel Aviv. I had no friends like me. And so for me, it was interesting to always navigate how we have to balance ourselves with the identities of our friends. And I found that throughout my life, most of the people that I had as friends were people who didn't really have a rich Jewish life like I did in Louisville, Kentucky. So it does come from the home. And I believe very strongly that, like, if we try to empower unaffiliated Jews, confused Jews, and think about how many Jews right now are so confused. Okay. They don't know what to believe because they're not willing to just believe the demonization. Those people are lost. Okay. There's no convincing them otherwise. And frankly, I do a lot of work over the years with non-Jewish groups. And I will tell you that right now, I wish only to hear their voice more. It's not that they don't get it. Many of them get it. They just aren't willing to speak out on behalf of Israel because it threatens them by association. I'm sure you've seen the movie The Gentleman's Agreement, right? The
Yeah.
old people need to be doing I've always dreamt of doing rescreening of movies like The Gentleman's Agreement and Cast a Giant Shadow with Kirk Douglas and Frank Sinatra, and you're like, and he says, "Don't leave me here. I'm an anti-Semite," because we have to help people understand that we're not living in something really original. It's a regurgitation of things throughout our history. It's like we're just seeing it in the movie of our time. And right now, the movie is showing that there are so many confused Jews. They're lost. They were never given it at home. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to, and if we only rely on social media, then they've got to feel really lucky if they come across somebody like you who is sharing a different voice. And there are a lot of people out there who are now coming out shall we say, coming out and saying, I am big and bold and a Jew and Zionist, and call me whatever bad name you will. You're not going to silence us again. That's the unique thing in our generation, is that we're able to say, no, 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 you know, not so easy to mess with anymore.
Hmm.
So I think that there's a that's part of what drives us forward of, okay, I'm just going to keep creating content. I love what you said before, that if somebody walks away or turn, and they've learned something and they've become more educated by what you've shared with them, isn't that what we dream of? We've
Yeah.
impacted one person's life. You know, that's a huge thing, to be able to impact one person. And then if that's multiple, so when you see all those likes that you get and the comments that you get, I hope that, Tyler, that gives you a lift every single time to counter the threats. Because sadly, the threats aren't really going to go anywhere. And they might get worse. Are you afraid of that, by the way? Do you think, I mean, the haters, if I go into my feed sometimes, I'm amazed at how much anti-Israel, Al Jazeera, all these others, they are still dominating my feeds. No matter what, no matter how many times I report and ban and nothing, they're still the dominant numbers. So how do you see this playing out? And back to that question, are you afraid of what's coming?
So I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of death threats. I sometimes they make me laugh. I
Oh, that's only because it's only because it's virtual.
yeah, it's
It's only because
virtual.
it's
It's
virtual.
virtual.
Yeah.
If it was in real
I've
life,
got a virtual citizen of Israel, one member of our
yeah,
global community who is, living in a place in Michigan where she is. I'm always learning from her about her death threats, and those are really scary because they're in person, they're
yeah,
neighbors,
yeah.
and she's alone. She's completely isolated, and she's not Jewish, so she doesn't have a community.
Mm,
Not that every Jewish person has a community that they're involved in, but I think that that makes it a lot easier for you to say, I can laugh it off because it
yeah.
is,
It's online.
it
It's
is
online,
online, kind of a
and yeah,
protective
it's
layer.
protective, and I make sure that they don't know where I live. They only have my email. They have nothing to find me online. I've made sure that I am
I mean,
protected the best I
how
can.
is that really true? They know everything about us.
Well,
They can get it. They can get it. You don't think your name is doxed somewhere on some list that they've got circulating for their secret cells of terrorists that are just waiting for the Iranian command in order to emerge from underground? You don't have this kind of vision like I do of what's coming.
no, no. I could be on a list, but I've never seen myself on those lists before. So I'm
Okay,
confident. I'm very confident that they don't know where I am. They don't know who I am. So I feel safe for now.
good
But
for you.
as to your other question about Al Jazeera and the numbers game, I am concerned about that. I am deeply concerned about that. We are, there's like 16 million Jews in the world, and we have over a billion people who either they're very anti-Israel or they're very anti-Semitic. We are in a battle. I consider it, we're in an everlasting battle between the 16 million voices, who, by the way, we also have dissenters within those 16 million voices who are anti-Israel like no other, versus a group that is hostile to Jews, hostile to Israel, hostile to Zionism. And I'm concerned. I'm scared. I'm scared because we don't know what the end game is here. We've seen increased anti-Semitism across North America, especially in Canada. We've had people shoot at Jewish day schools, shoot the windows. We've had someone attempt to firebomb a synagogue in Vancouver. We've had the school boards here try to force anti-Israel, anti-Semitic rhetoric into our school systems. I can't even talk about the United States because that's a disaster within itself. But here in Canada, it's becoming increasingly concerning. Uh, and it's the numbers game. We don't have enough people to be convincing. We don't. We honestly don't. The other side, they can get millions upon millions of people because one Instagram account that has 100 million people can reshare something that is idiotic, not based in fact, basically just a post that has misinformation. And it's shared countless times and we see it. I see it all the time.
It gets, and it just
Yeah,
fosters more and more ignorance, which feeds the hate. So it's an
yeah,
endless cycle. So not only do we not know the end game, we can't even really be considered as, shall we say, relevant players in the game because our numbers make us obsolete, we're irrelevant,
yeah.
essentially.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, if that's the case, then what do? We give up? No,
No,
we keep
of course
going
not. Yeah.
because nobody knows the end game. And at the end of the game, there's one thing we know. I saw recently, what was her name? One of the Barghouti families, and they rewrote, shall we say, a age-old message about the nation of Israel that we've outlasted every empire that has come to destroy us, and they wrote it, Palestinians have outlasted the Byzantines, and you're like, what? What? They've outlasted the Roman siege and the Greeks. And you're like, oh my God. And there are millions of likes. So all we know is that the end game is that the nation of Israel is eternal. And it's that same kind of awe over this fact that drew you back when you were a teenager to say, oh, it didn't really interest me, but there's a pull.
A
There is
very strong
something
pull.
there it's
Yeah.
me. And that is deep in me. And it's not the color of my skin, and it's not the political opinion I have, and it's not how I observe my Shabbat, however I do or do not observe my Shabbat or my kashrut. No, it is in me. And you're lucky that you found that spark because that's what's going to carry you and all the people that I hope you continue to influence through your activism. It's going to carry them onward because we don't know the end game other than Israel's continued to survive.
Exactly.
Israel, and we have to be a part of not only modern day Israel, but to know that it connects us with ancient Israel and all of the communities established in between, including throughout the Caribbean and all of the tiny towns. I once remember studying about Jewish life in Canada, and I was amazed at how it's very shtetl-like. Okay, you've
Mm,
got all these little tiny communities, and I'm an expert on Eastern European Jewry and also other areas, but there's so much replica of how Jewish communal life was
yeah.
established, right? And there's a reason, because when you're under attack, communities turn inward and they say, we may not be big, 50 Jewish families, right? You read about old destroyed Jewish communities, 50 Jewish families, 150 families, 500 families. Like, that's tiny because we're used to LA,
Oh, yeah.
Warsaw back in the day, Vilna, Toronto, right? We're used to the big numbers now. But these tiny communities, they actually are the carriers of the stories and the carriers of identity. And they say, you know what? Doesn't matter how broad we are. Our tiny community is strong. So maybe that's going to give us some inspiration even for the social media activists and influencers. And you share this onward in your community because I very much believe that I'm not a huge fan of the term influencer unless we can turn that term into a tangible influence. That means teaching other young people who want to do this more and want to work together, because the only way to counter their numbers is by using the genius of Jewish collaboration. We did it for many years when we were scattered all over, and there were Jewish pirates. Why? Because Jews could always arrive in a new town and find another Jew. Did you know that there's always been a word? They would walk along the trains and whisper, Amcha, Amcha. And it was, of course, the Yiddishized
Yeah.
Amcha, your people. And when somebody looked up, they knew they found somebody with whom they could sit and talk about the issues, be a Jew with another Jew. And I think there's something about that today. Zion, we look at each other, we say, Zion. It's not about Zionist political.
Yeah.
Zion, is there something that we can say is bringing us back to the source, reminding us that we can work together, reminding us that we can have a greater impact, because that's the way we're going to save the next generation. The anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, anti-Semites, these are cults that are going to regurgitate themselves in one evil way after another. So your collaborations, I think, are really a testament to the power of a virtual community. And I very much believe it. That's what Israel Forever is. We are a virtual community of virtual citizens of Israel. And Tyler, I'm bestowing upon you the honor of being a virtual citizen of Israel, because that's what you are.
Thank
You are
you.
the embodiment of it. Really, what I've always envisioned when I came up with this idea, you live as if you are here,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
live because we are Israel. You where you are and I where I am, we are Israel. We are the future. So I think it's really just astounding and inspiring to meet somebody who's like you and who's come to do so much to keep going. Is a big challenge. Is a big challenge. Wow. I'm so excited to have met you. What would you say to some young person who came to you and said, "Whoa, I just heard about you. You know, what can you tell me? How can you help me?" What would you say
Hmm.
to them?
Oh boy. Um, how could I help you? Number one, I would always say, do not neglect your Judaism for someone else. Do not placate it because someone is uncomfortable with you being Jewish. I've seen it many times where I see it online, especially where you have like Instagram has those closed friend stories where only your close friends can see what you post on your story. I see Jews doing this where they'll include me in their close friends list and they'll post pro-Israel content, but they won't post it on their regular Instagram because they're scared. They're scared that their friends, their work colleagues will see this and they'll say, "Oh my God, this is a Zionist. How can I be following a Zionist?" Don't do that. Don't do that because what you're saying to those people is your Judaism can be modified to suit their own personal comfortability. Why should you suit your Judaism for anyone else but yourself?
Wow. Yeah.
That's one of the things I would say firstly. And another thing I would say is do not give in to Jewish stereotypes. I cannot stand them. I the Jewish, oh, this Jew is neurotic and etc. etc. That's a Hollywood invention. We are
Hmm.
not neurotic. We're not mommy's boys and what have you, that Jewish stereotype of, oh, your Jewish mother and no, we have trauma induced responses to things because of our history, but we are not what our trauma makes us. And I think lastly, I would say to that young Jew, it is okay to be scared, to be proud to be Jewish. It's okay to be scared, But what is not okay is to hide. You can be, I'm scared. I'm scared when I wear my kippah in public on my McGinn David. I'm scared. I don't know what the reaction will be. Will I have to fight someone? Will I have to protect myself? I don't know. But even though I'm scared, I'm proud that I can wear this without being persecuted as the 6 million Jews were. I'm proud that I can wear these items that they fought to wear during not the Nazi occupation of Europe, of the Middle East, etc. I'm proud that I can wear Magen David without it being yellow on my chest and being forced to wear it. I'm proud that, I can eat Jewish food without being persecuted. I'm proud of all these things to be Jewish. And that's what I would say to them. You can be scared, but don't hide your Judaism for anyone else. Don't hide it. Be proud. So I guess that, yeah, that's what I would say. Those three
Some
things.
incredibly powerful advice and some beautiful passion, which is I really think that people like us need in order to keep going because it can be very overwhelming. Um, I know that every day you're faced with a lot and it's a heavy burden. Uh, you know, Sometimes it feels like too much. Do you ever want to give up? Do you ever feel burnout? Do you ever say, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah. I I get burnout a lot. I feel sometimes I just want to quit. I just want to delete my account and live my life.
Right.
Yeah, there are days where I see so much hatred that I'm like, to myself, what is the point of me doing this? And then I'm
That's right.
reminded by the DMs and messages and the comments why I do this. But
Yeah.
it's definitely a feeling. Like if a content creator or influencer, online educator says that, oh, I never get that feeling, they're lying. All of us have that feeling. All of us get it because it is so exhausting. The work is a burden. It can be a burden to do this work. And and it isn't helpful when you get hatred online. It isn't helpful when you can get hatred from your own community if you don't say the exact same thing correctly. So
Very true.
yeah.
Very true.
Yes.
Yes.
So
And let's
yeah,
add to that, by the way, that there's an additional friction between, you know, if you have a what perspective you have, American, European, Israeli, there's like this almost like ego game that we all
yeah,
have to stroke each other's ego and say, no, you're doing a great job. And then on the other hand, if all these organizations were doing such a great job, then why are we in the situation we're in? But I go back to the point of people in wartime, especially in times of conflict and persecution, the Jewish behavioral response very often is to turn insular. And so the communities that have these connections will feel even more lucky when faced with even feelings of burnout. I mean, I have a couple of mentor colleagues, I would call them. They've been doing this for 20, 30 years longer than me. And they'll send me a message and they'll be like, listen, I can tell in that tone that you just wrote about, I can tell you're feeling down. And don't you
yeah,
forget it. You need to keep doing what you're doing. And, um, you know, it's, it can choke you up. And I can say that see, we're living different wars, right? So like I'm also in the social media and the online wars and the activism war and even the internal communal battles that we have to fight of where does funding come from? How do we get through? How do we break through the noise? And you're in a social media world where it's also, a different type of noise and a different type of war. And not only we're not always speaking the same language. Like, do you have you connected also with, I'm assuming, Israelis and others that are, affected? I'm living inside the intensity. So, missiles over Tel Aviv today, where my sister's living, and so you're like, okay, that's one level of the intensity, and I need those voices of encouragement as much as possible, and we're not always getting them.
No,
We're not.
no.
But when we do, we have to kind of like it helps me to remember those messages when I'm telling you them so that you can learn from them too, because it's exhausting. It's a blessing and a curse, this life we lead. And I'm going to ask you another question, Tyler. Where do you see yourself going with this? Is this something that's got like, this is a part of you, this is also your future? And as you said, you've got a full-time, you've got a regular job too, right? That you've got a
Yeah,
balance in
yeah.
your life. But where do you see yourself going with all of this?
That's a very good question. There are days where I think that I won't continue Blunt Black Jew. I'll continue it for like 5 years more and then I'll end it all. But on the flip side, I see myself continuing this work, this activism. Not necessarily here in Canada. Um, I
Why you see yourself leaving? Do you see yourself leaving Canada?
a part of me, yeah.
Promises, no promises,
No
but we all
promises,
know.
yeah.
Listen, it is hard for people to pick up their lives. Okay, there were people who left Germany in the late 1920s already recognizing, and whatever's happening in North America and Canada is on fire. Okay, we know it, and it's only going to get worse when we've got London and we've got France and we've got. I mean, you pick a place. We're facing the threat of the jihadists trying to bring about a caliphate. These are historical facts that we are seeing emerge. But it's really hard to pick yourself up and to move your life and to rebuild, find a job. I mean, not everybody's going to make Aliyah. It's great for the people who
Yeah.
really see their life here. I always try to encourage people to think of Aliyah as a step, not a final. Like, if you want to be able to come and contribute to Israel during Israel's most crucial years and times of need, this is a great time to do it. And then you go on and you move wherever you can in your life if it doesn't suit you, because it's a cultural slap in the face, let's say. But it's, if you see yourself leaving the Canadian boiling pot that you're in right now.
Yeah, I've considered it. I've thought about it a lot, whether to make Aliyah and do my work there in Israel. But also the other flip of the coin is I'm not someone who wants to be pushed out of their country. I it's and I've had these discussions with a lot of my followers who are terrified, who they don't
Don't
understand
understand.
how what has happened to Canada. They don't understand it. They can't comprehend. Canada to them is no longer the Canada they grew up in. And I can say the same thing for myself. How I see Canada right now is not the same Canada I grew up in as well. But I'll be damned if I allow terrorists on the streets of Toronto, or Vancouver, of Montreal to say this isn't a place for Jews. No, I will not be pushed out. If I make Aliyah, it'll be a decision that I want to make, not because I'm forced to make. And I see myself still doing my work here, but it's hard. It's hard, it's demoralizing, and it's sad. It's heartbreaking to see what a country that built itself through multiculturalism and expressing and accepting all these identities and ethnic groups, we
Yeah.
see this hatred on the streets of Canada towards one ethnic minority, all this violence towards us, Jews. So it's disheartening. It's very disheartening.
And frightening that it's becoming almost legal. I remember it was what, a month after October 7th, there was a rally there, and there was somebody dressed as a suicide bomber. And that's not illegal. I mean, then again, now
Yeah.
it's everywhere. They're dressed as Hamas terrorists, and nobody cares. You know, green headbands seem to be all the rage. Right along with your kafia, which is like just the hipster. What's that meme I saw go around? The hipster swastika, right? It's listen, we got to laugh about it to a certain
Yeah.
extent, but at the other end of the spectrum, we have to realize there needs to be more action and not only words. And I think that that's a little bit of the problem we're seeing, that there's not enough people and enough leadership or enough funding or enough security to bring about the type of action that needs to happen in order to stop this. My fear is the outgrowth of the violence is going to be uncontrollable until it kind of reaches the top, and we're not there yet. That's my fear. But let's see. We have now upheaval in American politics, and we have more countries supporting Israel that we did not anticipate in the past. And you never know how many more members might join the Abraham Accords and start to normalize relations and accept Israel so that you have the choice, Tyler. Like Israel is the option, but not the only option.
Exactly.
Should you want to leave where you go? Talked to people from Chicago and Michigan and all sorts of outlying areas. And they're like, I want to be able to leave, but where am I going to go right now? Everywhere's a hotbed. Everywhere is on fire. Everywhere I'm afraid of building my life. I know of someone who had moved to Philadelphia and started their, private practice only to be, blackballed for her pro-Israel activism. I mean, these are real issues of workplace anti-Semitism that basically nobody's talking about. I'm doing some work with a young man who started a campaign to counter workplace anti-Semitism. Nobody wants to talk about it because they don't want to threaten their careers. They don't want to threaten their jobs. So where I've also talked, by the way, with social media activists, and I'm like, come on, let's do a Zoom. Let's get your story out there. You can be inspiring to others. And they're like, no, 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 no. I don't want anybody to hear my voice and be able to identify me.
Yeah.
So
That's another
that's
fear. Yeah.
that's a fear. And it's a legitimate fear. And one person I spoke to, she was more afraid for her children because, her children are now on campuses. And imagine that paper trail of figuring out, you said yourself, people's female family members being threatened with kidnapping and rape just because of their social media activism. Imagine when that starts to trickle down into in-person confrontations. And I am afraid that that is going to be a next phase. And let's only hope that some leaders will emerge and stop that violent trend. I don't know who
Hopefully.
it's going to be. I don't see
Hopefully.
as many influencers coming out of the woodwork to become what I call Israel strong, right? We started this program months and months ago, looking for people around diaspora communities who wanted to be involved in actual self-defense training, creating little enclaves. They can be secret, of people who would come together and say, let's do a Krav Maga, or let's do a training on how to confront face-to-face attacks. You're at the bank, you're in line at the bank, somebody sees your kippah. What do you do? What do you say? That kind of training is very different than the advocacy kind of training that we need. And there are great organizations doing that kind of training. But what about Joe Schmo Jew, who
Mm.
just wants to know that I'm able to defend myself? If I heard a story of the other day, that somebody was in a safe room in a store with all of the employees. So all of the employees were Arabs, and their sirens are going off, and what a surreal
Mm.
situation. And they were all talking and being, friendly and everything, because that's not the situation you're going to find yourself in the diaspora. That's going to happen here in Israel. We have such a unique non-apartheid society that these kinds of things happen, where you find yourself under missile fire with fellow Israelis talking about, this reality we live. But out there in the world, I think that being Israel strong is something that diaspora Jews can be learning from. So let's take our influence out also of social media and maybe encourage people to also become strong, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. It needs
confident.
to happen. It needs to
It
happen.
does need to happen. It does need to happen. I am so pleased to be able to talk with you and to hear your voice. Is there something that you wish is like we're coming into this crazy time period? The war is continuing, it's opening up on many fronts. What would you say is your next prediction of like that campaign, that message? Or do you find that it's more like a day to day you're dealing with news? Which way do you like to shape your content creation?
My content creation is more shaped day to day, even though I
Yeah,
don't post day to
that's
day.
exhausting.
Yeah, it's exhausting. I could never do it. But I usually choose a topic that permeates the mind after a few days, weeks, even a month. And I talk about it. I talk about it through my perspective. So I'm more day to day, but also I'm realistic. I'm not posting every single day. I'm not it'll be
Yeah.
too much.
I
It'll be
think
too
that probably also is an appeal to people.
Yeah,
Like they see that you are giving not a every single incident that is happening every day. You're trying to give a reaction. And there are those styles of influencers, but there's also the people who are like, no, let me try to help you synthesize over this time period according to a theme that speaks to you. I
exactly.
think that that might be a lot of the appeal
Yeah,
of your followers that they're really appreciating. And I think you have a really honest voice. I think that you
thank you.
portray in your activism something that is just, you're not screaming it out. You're welcoming people with this voice to say, to be a part of it with you. And I think that is really inspiring. I hope that other people can learn from you. I would love to see the kinds of, social media activist training. I have an elders group, and they're like, Ilana, we want to do more than just press like. We want to learn how to do social media activism. So maybe, Tyler, I can connect you with some of these beautiful elder, senior virtual citizens of Israel, and you can help train them and you
Yeah,
can show them, hey guys, here's some tips on how you can activate your voice. What do you
yeah.
say?
I would be down to help. That would be fun.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I think there are a lot of people who are feeling inspired by you, Tyler, and I am definitely one of them. It's really been great to meet with you.
Thank you so
I
much.
hope that this is the beginning. I'd love to talk with you again and see what more we could do. Because I bet also, I'm going to add this actually as an aside. I grew up with a few friends who were, shall we say, dark skinned for one or reason or another. Because I have one friend I grew up with where their mother had converted when she was very young, and then I had another friend who actually was a Jamaican Jew.
Mm,
Interestingly enough, when I was living in Aspen, Colorado, I had the benefit of working for the Jazz Fest. So for 3 different summers, 3 different programs, I got to hang out with the Marley family and to
ah,
learn about their Zionism. And they would always be asking me questions about Israel and about Judaism. And it was all of them, these gorgeous women with it. Oh, it was just the most amazing experience. It was 25, almost 30 years ago. And it was just beautiful to see that there was an interest in a multicultural approach to understanding another person, another person's identity. And you bridge all these different elements of identity. So I hope that other people will be able to hear your story, feel inspired, seek out their own story, really come to a proud space within their identity, and that color of skin is not a barrier for anyone or anything amongst our nation, because this is who Jews are. We are every color. We're every type of practice. We're every type of politics.
yeah,
And and you know what? Maybe based on that diversity, that's why we've been able to outlast every empire that has come to destroy us.
exactly.
Exactly. So
Exactly.
we're going to continue to do so. Thank you so
Yes,
much, Tyler, for sharing your voice and
no
for talking with
problem.
me. This
Thank
has been
you.
enlightening.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We're going to do it again. You got it?
Yes, we
All
will.
right.
We will.
All right. Have a
All
wonderful rest of your night, your day in your time zone.
right.
And may we all know peace. Yet again, Iran is threatening us today as a result of the election. Who knows? We live under threat. We have to learn to live up to it and to live beyond it. Right?
Exactly.
There you
Mhm.
go. Thank you so much, Tyler, for being with
No
me tonight.
problem. No
You be
problem.
well, dear.
You
Stay
too.
safe.
I will. You
Bye.
too.
Okay.
Bye.
And sane. And sane.
Yes.
That's part of our struggle. And you know
Yeah.
what? Madness enjoys company. So you've got company in me. I love it.
Okay.
You be well, dear. We'll be in
Sure.
touch.
We will be.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.